Hello, everybody, and welcome to Public Speaking, the Career Game Changer. My name is Bobbie Carlton. I'm the founder of Innovation Women. Innovation Women is an online speakers bureau. So, to get us all started and in the mood, although I'm definitely in the mood, I love the music they were playing as we're leading into things. But get us in the mood. I'm going to have everybody close their eyes. And I would love it if you could think about the last conference that you went to. Or if you've never been to a conference that hasn't been online, think about the possibility of going to an in-person conference and event. So you have got your badge. Maybe you've got your coffee or your green tea, whatever you are loving at this moment. And you are heading into a panel that is the top experts in your industry. These people are the epitome of cybersecurity royalty. Now, does that group look like this? Hmm, I'll bet it does. We call this a manel. That is an all-male panel. And you'll notice our particular panel, this is a all-male and all-pale panel, and they are probably also an all-stale panel. They are probably the same four old white guys that you have seen over and over and over again. And the reason for that is two-thirds of all conference speakers are men. And this basically points to one of the problem that most conferences, not this one, have. They have a huge problem. It is a very visible problem. It is so bad that it is mocked on social media. This is actually a Tumblr called Congrats, you have an all-male panel. And you can take a picture of your all-male panel and you can stamp it with a picture of David Hasselhoff giving you, the event manager, the big thumbs up. These manels reflect on all of us, not just the industry. And, maybe we don't care. I know I care, but why should we all care? Number one, what we see on stage represents who we think the leaders are in an industry. It changes how we see the world and it impacts how our brains see the world. It also impacts who we see as leaders and who are the potential leaders of the future. Diversity and inclusion is much more than gender. It's abilities, it's culture, it's personal characteristics, it's even health and demographics and professional backgrounds. Now, let's talk a little bit further about speaking. And I have something I call the 5 C's of public speaking. These are the benefits of public speaking. And this is why I care about public speaking so much. When you are on stage, you have the ability to tell your story. You can connect directly with customers. You can help impact your career. What do employers want? They want confident, competent employees. And when you're on stage, your current employer sees you and you are projecting confidence and you are demonstrating your competence. But in addition, other employers can see you. And maybe there's a new job in the offing just because you were involved in public speaking. If you are comfortable with public speaking, you get more cash. This is the 3rd C, cold, hard cash. People who are comfortable with public speaking actually earn more money. People who are uncomfortable tend to get paid less. Warren Buffett actually very famously talked about the value of public speaking. This quote is actually a quote that's used by Dale Carnegie. And Dale Carnegie is a training organization that does a lot of training around public speaking and presence and networking. And the reason they use this quote so much, and they mention Warren Buffett is he used to be famously terrified of public speaking to the point he would get physically ill when he was going out on stage. And the story behind this quote is actually not that well known. The story is that he was speaking after he took some great Dale Carnegie courses, of course. He was speaking at Columbia University to a class of MBA students. And what he told them is, I want to invest in you. I want to give you $100,000 right now. I will write out a check if you consent to give me a certain percentage of all your future income. Now, I can just see these MBA students going, oh my God, is this a good deal? Is this a good deal for me? Is this a good deal for Warren Buffett? Trying to figure out if this is worth their while to take him up on this audacious offer. But he had more. He said, I have a better offer for you. I will pay you $150,000, 50% more, if you consent to taking classes in public speaking, because you are worth more to me and I will make more money off my investment. When you are involved in public speaking, you also make connections. And it's not just the connections in the room, especially in this day and age with social media being so prevalent. One of the things that happens when you speak is you speak to all the connections of the people who are in the audience at that moment. If I happen to say something particularly brilliant, you might tweet about it. You might post it on another social network. You might just tell somebody about it. So, in other words, in addition to the connections I'm making in this room or this virtual room, I am also getting connected or potentially getting connected to your connections. In addition, it's not just about when I'm doing the public speaking. It's also all of the marketing that goes into an event. Think about it. This organization sent out emails. They promoted the event on social media. Maybe there's a program at a physical event. Maybe there's signs. All of these things are promoting the content or the speakers actually at the event or the conference. And so every time somebody is promoting the event, they're promoting the speakers. They're promoting me, they're promoting you. So when you get involved in public speaking, your name, your company name, and your area of expertise get blasted around the universe. So you are making many more connections than just the people in the room. And finally, that fifth C, credibility. At a physical event, when you're speaking, you're often up on a stage. And when you're up on a stage, you are elevated. You are elevated physically. But when you are involved in public speaking and you're at the front of the room on a virtual or a regular in-person live event, you are seen as an expert. People think, oh, she's been vetted. She knows more than I do. She was specially chosen to give this presentation. So you get credibility when you are a public speaker. Now, I want to talk to you about the speaker's paradise. There are so many opportunities out there for you to speak. Pre-pandemic, did you know there were more than 50,000 individual TEDx events? Eventbrite in 2019 sold tickets to more than 3 million events. There were 500,000 or more meetups that happened every month. And that's to say nothing of the 92,000 professional organizations in the US alone who are doing events. Some of them are doing events monthly. Some of them are doing events annually. Some of them are doing events every single week. And they are bringing in speakers because speakers make the event. This is a $37 billion industry before the pandemic. And don't think that opportunities went away because we all started hanging out at home. The new normal really reflects what happened to events when the pandemic hit. They really only had three choices. Number one, you could cancel. Number two, you could postpone. Or number three, you could go virtual. A lot of professional organizations actually have a requirement to have an annual meeting. It doesn't matter what that annual meeting looks like, but they have to have a meeting. And that meant that a lot of them were actually required to go virtual. And what happened to all the organizations that used to attend events? They all started throwing their own. So, what does this mean for you? It means there are increased opportunities to actually do a little bit of public speaking. And now you can do it from the comfort of your own home. Very, very convenient. No more traveling the world, no more airports, no more running around with your undies in a handbag. You are able to do these things from home. So, virtual events are a great opportunity, especially for women. I don't know if you know it, but women are more likely to work part time. Women are more likely to work for smaller organizations, and we're still more likely to be responsible for kids at home. These are all things that conspired against us when you look at conferences and events and public speaking. So now it gets a little bit easier. There are so many opportunities out there. For example, you can be speaking at universities, colleges, and schools. There are all different types of speaking opportunities inside these organizations. You could be looking inside your own company. This is still public speaking. There are so many different kinds of public speaking. You could be working with an employee resource group, or an ERG. For example, the Women in Tech group or the Women in Your Company Here group, they often have training or they have events where they are looking for speakers. You could be doing internal presentations, perhaps part of your company's annual kickoff. You could be part of a panel. You could be doing group talks. You could actually be doing these same things inside other companies. So many organizations bring in speakers, and what they're doing is they are bringing in outside influence, they are bringing in outside knowledge. Again, with the ERGs, again, with the training. Sometimes it's entertainment and enrichment, especially right now with the whole great runaway that's happening in terms of hiring. Companies are looking for ways that they can keep their employees engaged. And often that means a speaker. I also want to point out that a lot of people look at nonprofits and other organizations and say, oh, I want to be paid for my speaking, so I'm not going to go look at a nonprofit. I will tell you that just because they're a nonprofit does not mean that there's no money for speakers. There are other also new opportunities for public speaking. You can get involved in podcasts. You could be a guest on a podcast, or you could run your own podcast. You can get involved in audio only platforms like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces. You could run your own YouTube channel. You could be doing LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live. You could also be doing different things like a direct sales summit, or there are pay to play or sponsored opportunities for speaking. A whole wide world of speaking is out there, and there are just so many different opportunities. Now, one of the things that I promised when I put together this presentation specifically for Day of Security is I would walk you through how you actually find speaking opportunities. I want to let you know that there are so many different players in this type of industry, in this field. So you're going to be talking to people who are involved with getting speakers on stage. Who are the players? There could be an in-house team that works for your company. For example, your public relations team, your HR team. A lot of them are looking inside the company and saying, who can we put on stage? So I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is the more women your company puts on stage, the more opportunities they have to provide evidence that they are a female friendly organization. So your in-house team is your friend, seek them out. Not only do they have often speaking opportunities to share, they also have training and help for you in terms of pulling together your presentations. There are things like speakers bureaus and placement bureaus. And by the way, these things are two different things. A lot of corporations work with placement bureaus who actually go and do the work to get their employees on stage and speaking at conferences and events. A traditional speakers bureau is often focused on paid speakers. And as you move up through the ranks, maybe you could end up there. Speakers platforms like the one that I run, but there are also many other different opportunities to get engaged with public speaking. So, if you're thinking about public speaking, one of the things you want to realize and understand is what gets you on stage. And the basic currency of public speaking is called a call for speakers. And what we're going to do is walk you through the process of finding a call for speaker that works for you. Now, most people don't do this, but what I'm going to do is say it is okay right now during this presentation for you to open up another tab. Or if you've got a second screen, open up a tab over there. What you're going to do is go to your friend Mr. Google or Ms. Google, depending on your preference, and you are going to do a search. Cybersecurity call for speakers, security call for speakers, and you're going to see what comes up. And 10 to 1, there are probably some great opportunities out there for you. You can use things like location if you just want to do things close to home, or even this year or next year. A call for speaker is what the event manager issues when they are looking for you to propose yourself as a speaker at their event. And they usually do these a bit ahead. So right now, we're probably getting toward the end of calls for speakers for 2021, and we're looking ahead to 2022 and even 2023. And if you're doing that search, what you're going to see down at the bottom of the page is you're going to see other suggestions. So searches related to, and again, I use cybersecurity and calls for speakers. What you're going to see is suggestions where these are other searches that you could perform. These are the types of things that will help you find opportunities. And again, you can narrow the search even a little bit more by instead of searching all of Google, by clicking on that news item in the navigation bar. So you see here on my screen, I have all, and I have news, and I have images. When you click on the news section, what it's doing is it's bringing up press releases and media announcements. So in this case, a lot of organizations actually issue a press release. They are so interested in getting new speakers and new voices on stage that they're spreading the word. So in this particular case, what we've got is Security Magazine is looking to promote all of these different conferences, and they've got calls for speakers. Look at this. Call for speakers is still open. And by the way, this is an older search that I'm using as a demonstration, so you will probably see other things. And if you're not interested in a cybersecurity conference, you can look for almost anything. When you're thinking about searching on calls for speakers, what you're going to do as well is you're going to look at your key industry organizations, associations, and events. And one of the things you can do is you can go right to their newsletter list, sign up, and start getting information from that organization. Because one of the things that a lot of these organizations do is they will issue their call for speaker first to their own community. They will send it out in their own newsletter. So if you're getting that newsletter and you're paying attention, you may see the calls for speakers before the general public does. You're going to be looking at the top industries as well as the top abstracts and topics from others in your industry. Also, you can obviously check in on Innovation Women. Our list of calls for speakers changes just about daily. And we are always putting new ones in because new ones are always becoming available. And just to give you a sense of kind of the universe for this stuff, I think right now we have almost 500 different calls for speakers on our platform. So there are almost always opportunities out there. When you are looking for opportunities to speak, there's always a class of opportunity that I call the usual suspects. These are the biggest organizations in your industry. You know that they always have opportunities because they are always putting on new events. You don't have to keep up with just them. Sometimes you can start a little bit smaller or more local, and creating your own target list with deadlines will help you keep track of all of this. So, what you can do is actually create this calendar, put it into your online calendar. You don't have to use a piece of paper like we're showing here, and start early because what you want to do is you want to be one of the first people to submit your information for those calls for speakers. A lot of people wait until that deadline, and some organizations have rolling deadlines where they might be completely filled by the time their deadline rolls around. Again, you are connecting with the event managers in your industry. These are the people who are controlling access to the stage for your industry conferences and events. All right. I'm going to jump over and just real quickly check out if there's any questions. And I'm going to see if there is anything in particular that people want to jump in. By the way, ask questions at any time. I'm not looking at the question list really all the time, trying to look at that camera. But if there are particular questions, pop them in there and we will get to questions in just a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually walk you through some pro tips in terms of getting yourself on stage. Number one, don't just look at the industry focus. If you are a cybersecurity professional, you're probably thinking to yourself, I need to look at just the cybersecurity options. The reality is there are often, oh my God, so many different kinds of tracks in any conference. For today, I'm your prime example. I am not a cybersecurity professional. I am a marketing person. And what I'm doing is I am participating in the career track. So, as examples, you could be looking at career tracks and talking about your own experience. Maybe you have an expertise in salary negotiation or resume writing or time management or other things that are not kind of at that tippy top industry level. There are so many options in terms of public speaking and presenting. If you are using the call for speakers and you're starting to submit, I would love it if you could sit down in a quiet place and think about why you and your talk are perfect for each other. Why are you the best person to be addressing this topic? And you also need to think about what is the one thing that you know that nobody else does. And we all have this. We all have our own secret sauce. And you need to think about how you put that into a form that answers your audience's questions, that addresses their needs and their pain. And think about it in terms of how you turn all of that, your expertise, into a winning abstract and a winning submission for that calls for speaker. These are the things that really stand out to event managers. If you are thinking more about what your audience needs than what you want to communicate, you are going to be better off. I also want you to think on beyond the big industry conference. Think about what's happening in your local area. I'm in the Boston area, and a lot of things that happen in the Boston area in terms of events and conferences, people think the big industry conferences are all at the Boston Convention Center. Well, there are so many different local organizations that are doing events that are looking for speakers. Everything from local meetups to events that are being held by local organizations. And sometimes big audiences happen in strange places. One of my examples here is Meetup. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, Meetup, it's, how you get together with other people who want to play volleyball on weekends. Nope, Meetup is often a lot of professional stuff too. The example that I point to here in the Boston market is the Boston Open Data Group. And the Boston Big Data Organization actually puts on an annual conference which has thousands of attendees. But their meetups, the 5,000 members of that meetup group often get together and talk about big data and open data science. And they have professional speakers coming in all the time. So don't just ignore groups like that. They are great opportunities for you, perhaps right in your own backyard. In terms of my pro tips, I also want you to seriously think about timing. As you are putting together your calendar of opportunities, as you are looking ahead, think about the opportunities in terms of when you need to apply, when that event manager is pulling together that event. And sometimes there are nice little clues that can help you figure that out. If you're looking at a big industry conference or an event, you can actually see when they've issued their calls for speakers in previous years. You can put that in your calendar and watch for it and say, all right, in the past 6 years, they've put out their call for speaker on January 4th. Bet you anything it's going to come out around the same time this year. So you can keep an eye out for things. Some organizations, some conference, they're kind of rolling as they go. They have an event every month and they're getting a speaker on stage practically 5 minutes before the event goes off. These are the people that you can probably contact a little bit closer to the actual event date. Some annual events, they start looking for the next year's speakers even before this year's event is done. So think about the timing and think about what you can do to get yourself in the door even earlier. You also want to think about cultivating a relationship with the event managers. Find out what they're looking for, what they need. A lot of event managers issue this thing that is their wish list. It's actually the listing of things that they've gotten in the past. It's called the agenda, right? They are telling you exactly the winning submissions because they're putting it together as their program. What do I mean by that? What I mean is the winners for that conference in terms of speakers every single year because those are the people that are on stage. But if you're talking to an event manager, one of the questions that you can ask is, what is an abstract or a talk that you want to give that you haven't been given yet? And often that is really great inside knowledge, and it's not something that people have asked them before. And if you've been applying to speak and you haven't gotten that opportunity to do so yet, ask for feedback. And one of the things about that I really miss about the events that are held in person is the ability to kind of wander around and find the people that are standing at the back of the room and Ask them. They're often the event managers. They're checking out what's going on stage, and that's a time that you can ask them what they think, what they're looking for. Make sure you wait until after the event is done, i.e., figure out who they are then, introduce themselves, but ask them afterwards. They're super busy during conferences. My goal and the goal of this whole presentation is to get all of you to say yes to public speaking. And I do want to let you know that I understand that public speaking for so many people is something that makes them incredibly nervous. I know a lot of people point to the lists of concerns and phobias and fears and say public speaking ranks way up there. I do want to let you know that there are opportunities out there for everyone at all levels and all stages. It isn't that you have to do some big presentation. You don't have to be the keynote your first time out. You can work up to these things. Panels are a great way to start. And actually, one of the great ways to start is being a member of the audience and asking a question. Think about it. Not only are you getting to stand up, raise your hand, tell your name, your company name, probably putting your question into context, but you are talking to the same audience, the same people that the presenters on stage are talking to. You are engaging in public speaking, and it's a wonderful way to ease yourself into this opportunity. And so, on that note, this is the point where you make friends with the speaker, because there is nothing that speakers hate more than getting finished with a presentation, asking a question, and hearing crickets. So, on that note, I'm going to turn to our questions and see if we have questions from our audience. Remember, this is the way to make friends with the speaker, by asking a question. All right. So let's see what we have for questions. Anyone want to pop up with those questions? Remember, you're the speaker's best friend if you do that. Let's see. I see a whole discussion about introverts and extroverts. And I will tell you that introverts right here are us. I am an introvert, and I got better at public speaking by practice. I started an organization, I started an event where I had to be the MC every single month. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I became with it. There's plenty of evidence, though, of those early events where I have sweated through all my clothes, where I am so nervous, but you get better over time. And oh, by the way, it's a whole lot easier to do this on screen than it is to do it in front of a live audience. So, great discussion on introverts and extroverts. And by the way, a lot of introverts, it isn't that we're nervous about getting on stage, it isn't that we're scared of it. It's just that after we're done presenting, we need a little bit of time to recover and get ourselves back together before we go off and do something else. What is my favorite thing about public speaking and my least favorite thing? Hmm. I think one of my favorite things about public speaking is getting to meet so many new people, because when you're on stage, everybody knows who you are, and often they will come up and introduce themselves. They are friendlier in the audience. You're standing in line. Often people have something to talk to you about. Um, my least favorite thing is actually the act of public speaking itself. I love preparing for things. And if I could give one piece of advice or maybe one plea to people who consider themselves introverts, it's think about doing public speaking, because introverts are often the people who are most likely to prepare. Extroverts are a little bit more likely to attempt to wing it. So, some of the best speeches come from people who consider themselves introverts because they are prepared. All right, some other questions here. So, any tips if the audience is not paying attention if I am a first time speaker? I think if you're in a physical space, if the audience isn't paying attention, one of the things that you can do is you can pick out a member of the audience, perhaps someone who is in the front row, and ask them a question. Audiences, if they're not paying so much attention to the speaker, tend to pay attention if you're engaging with somebody who's actually one of them and in the audience. Sometimes it helps if you've got them to answer a question, get them to stand up, tell everyone what they said. So that kind of brings the focus back to you and to what you're trying to accomplish. You can ask the audience questions, start to get engagement from them. That tends to bring the attention back to you. So let's see here. What do you suggest for someone who is socially anxious like me? I went to DEF CON on August, was invited to a mixer party, and I was at the door and saw a lot of, yes, that's me. Okay. If you are thinking about networking and it gives you the heebie-jeebies, here is a different way to think about it. I call it 1, 2, 3. All right. You are a person of one. You are going into an event. What you want to do is you want to look for other people who are by themselves. That person is going to be so incredibly grateful to you when you go up to them because they're all alone. No one goes to an event to stand by themselves. So when you go, remember that person is grateful that you have come up to them and introduced yourself. Suddenly, there are two of you. And you can talk about how incredibly annoying and heebie-jeebie-ish this event is or it makes you, and you suddenly have a sidekick. There are two of you. You are standing together. Now, what I want you to do is not stand so that you are facing each other. You are creating a closed circle, if that is what you're doing. What I want you to do is stand slightly side by side. Okay? This leaves your circle open for other people to join you. If other people join you, suddenly you've got 3 people in part of a conversation. You are no longer alone and neither are they. If you and the second person who are talking to each other don't have someone come over to you because you're being open and welcoming, you can look around the room and say, who else is by themselves? Let's invite them to join us. With this type of structure around your networking and your party going effects, you actually will feel a lot more comfortable in terms of going to it because it's not about you, it's about them. And by the way, public speaking is like that too. It's not about you, the speaker, it's about how you can be of service to the audience. Let's see here. We've got some other questions. And by the way, I have 2 screens, so apologies on the over this away thing. Let's see here. Thea, I'm comfortable volunteer teaching K through 12 students, but don't feel qualified talking to my peers due to lack of experience. Although I know about specific info, what advice do you have to overcome imposter syndrome? Well, first off, I love the idea about talking to students. Students, obviously, you're going to know more than they do. But students are usually a very welcoming crowd because you have so much more information because you're working out in the industry, much more information than they do. It's a great place to get more comfortable with the idea of yourself as an expert. You can actually kind of work your way up through the educational system. You can start with students at a career day, the elementary school students. You can work your way up into high schools, again, career day type things. One of the first panels that we put together as Innovation Women was a panel of millennials for a university nearby so that they could talk about how they got their first job. Most of them were still in their first job, and I am pretty certain that not one of them had previously been on stage before. So you're working your way up, you're getting more comfortable with public speaking, you're getting more practiced with the phrases and the knowledge that you're sharing. Then I want you to think about how you can position yourself to take advantage of the knowledge you have. For example, one-on-ones. So many people have stopped doing hands-on stuff that they really don't have that knowledge anymore. If you are early on in your career, you can offer one-on-ones like nobody's business because you're doing this every day. I work with a lot of tech tools that just constantly change. And so if you can identify some of those things, you can put together a great presentation where you are sharing these early secrets, these things that only somebody who is hands on with the tool is going to know. You are going to think about this in a way that somebody who is more senior, who is not hands on, is not going to be thinking about. So think about putting a frame around your knowledge and focusing in on very specific things. I've talked to some speakers who are just incredible experts in a very small area, really a niche that they are occupying and they know better than anybody else. So target your presentation and target your expertise. Again, as you get more comfortable with public speaking, you're going to feel more comfortable with the opportunities at a higher level. I would also think about looking for panel opportunities. You're not on stage by yourself giving a presentation. What you're doing is often sitting with a group on stage where you're talking about what you do. It doesn't necessarily have to be you creating a presentation, and you don't have to be all alone. So panels are your friend. Let's see here. Christabel, I have a lot of ideas on what to speak about. I feel there are a lot of things I'm passionate about and I would love to speak about. How do I choose one or narrow it down? Because I believe if I'm starting a podcast, it has to be centered around a particular topic. This is where coming from a position of service might be a good opportunity for you. Talk to people, other people, about what their pain is. Think about what they need. If you are creating something, it needs an audience, and that audience has pain, they have trouble, they have questions. Find out what they are and find out where those things match with your knowledge and your expertise. We are, as speakers, as teachers, as educators, as communicators, only as good as we can be when we are solving someone else's pain. Another strategy along these lines is to ask everybody you know this question: if I wrote a book, what would it be about? This will give you a sense of how other people see you and your expertise. All right. Let's see here. Other questions. Um, do, do. Did you do anything formal to build your baseline, such as Toastmasters, or did you jump right in? Truthfully, I have a broadcasting degree from college, and so I did some work early on, like back in college with presentation skills and things like that. Uh, then I let it all go quiet for a long time, and part of my job was to put other people on stage, which was a weird case of do as I say, not as I do, because I was not doing the presenting. I was helping other people do the presenting. And it really came down to me starting my own company and having no real thought about what I was doing other than the fact I was running an event every single month. And it really wasn't until I did the event the first time and I realized, oh my God, my role has got to be the MC and host of this event. So I started doing presentations and more speaking. I started getting invited to things, and it was a case of practice, practice, practice. If you are looking for training, couple of things. Yes, Toastmasters is fantastic. It's a great opportunity to practice. My reoccurring theme, practice, practice, practice. I would also suggest looking into improv classes. I think improv classes are amazing in terms of getting people comfortable with public speaking and giving them strategies for public speaking, especially during the Q&A section. That's what actually a lot of people get very nervous about. They're fine doing a presentation, but they are so nervous when it comes to the questions because they don't know what somebody's going to ask. But I think taking an improv class gives you strategies that you can use. So, training, absolutely. Your company might offer speaker training. There's a couple of other things. Number one, get videos of yourself speaking. I mean, sometimes it's painful to watch, but you will notice things. Uh, I will say, don't ask your friends because often your friend's reaction is, you were great, you were wonderful. If you want to ask friends and colleagues, what you need to do is ask them very specific things to get very specific feedback. Ask them about a specific place in the presentation. Ask them about this versus that. Give them choices because people want you to succeed. If you ever think about how people act when a speaker is failing on stage, they get very quiet. They want the speaker to succeed. They don't want you to fail. They want to support you. So most people's instinct is to tell you you did a fabulous job. And you come off stage and there's clapping and there's applause. That's because we do want, as an audience, the speakers to do a great job. Think about Jennifer Lawrence falling up the stairs. What was it, at the Oscars? It's like the whole audience goes quiet and there's wild applause when she picks herself up and keeps going. A lot of times when people fail, it isn't the failure we remember, it's how they picked themselves up and succeeded afterwards. Other questions here. Um, cool. Great product suggestions in the chat. And yes, improv. Excellent. I love it. Did I miss questions? I feel like I did up at the top. They were kind of running so quickly. Okay, we've got another question up here. And lots of great suggestions, some Toastmasters. That's fantastic. And cool. All right. So, moving on. I know we've got like 3 or 4 more minutes before we go off to the next thing. So, I will tell you that if you are interested, I'm easy to find. I'm very Googleable. And you can also check out, we have an enormous number of resources for speakers. You don't have to be a member or anything of Innovation Women. So innovationwomen.com. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram as Women Inno, and also reach out to me. I'm very happy to help people if you have questions or concerns about public speaking. This is something that I think everyone should get comfortable with. And a few years ago, I was on a panel at a conference, and a woman in the audience asked, as a student, what's the best thing I can do for my career? And before I could say a word, the other two members of the panel said, get comfortable with public speaking. And if you are a woman, I will challenge you as well. And I will say that part of why I'm here is I want more women to say yes to public speaking. Event managers tell us that half of all women who are invited to speak say no, while 90% of men say yes. So we need to increase those numbers and decrease the percentage of men on stage because it makes better events. The more diversity we have on stage, the more viewpoints we hear, the more we learn. So, thank you all so much. And I'm hanging around the show. If you want to chat, definitely connect with me and we will see you all soon. All right. Oh, and of course, I'm like doing the big goodbye, and there's, of course, more questions. So if people are heading out and going to another session, feel free. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for having me here today. And there is an additional question down here. So, is there an organization for women in tech who can mentor for public speaking? I don't know. Definitely come see us. We have so much information. So, yes, innovationwomen.com. And again, we do have all kinds of webinars and resources and things like that that will help you get started with public speaking or enhance your skills and further your career. All right, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.